Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sharma and team. I believe it was an interesting discussion that could go on. And we have come to our final session today. It's on internet resources, services in the Pacific Islands. We have 3 presenters, and I'd like to call them up. We have Russell Decker from UPNG. We have Bruce Tonkin from AUDA, and Jampika from ICANN. So those would be our last presenters. I believe we can, they can give us those presentations within the hour, so you're not going to stay too late, but I want to encourage you to stay with us until we finish this session. So thank you, Russell.
Thank you, MC Andrew-san, and very interesting previous session. Thank you, Doctor. And before starting my presentation, please stand up. Please stand up. Just make a relax. We are sitting too long. Too long. Up, sideways, sideways, right, right. And say hello to your neighbors in your language. Hola, Abinuntur, konnichiwa, hello, bura, whatever. Yeah. Please take a seat. Okay, let's start my session. I think I'll finish just 10 minutes because I know this AI is a 21st century or even 22nd century. And back to my era, 20th century. So my name is Russell Decker Harada. I'm originally from Japan, but been in Papua New Guinea as a CCTLD manager past 3 years. But I'm living in Papua New Guinea 27 years. AI already captured my presentation or not? It's all right, it's all right. Yeah, nice. It's all right. I'm just joking. And my role is a director of ICTS PNG University of Technology. For your correction, not UPNG. UPNG is a University of PNG, Papua New Guinea. And just this year, I heard very sad news. Some our directors, my colleagues, buy a cash for grade. Some academic integrity matters caused by human, not AI. Sometimes, traditionally, some student pay cash to lecturer, and lecturer change their academic marks. It's very common, and not only PNG, but everywhere. Like for my example, when I was in college, I always failed physics, and I gave up my physics subject. So I'm not paid cash, but I offer to my lecturer, I can look after your dog 24/7, and you can give me some grade, not an A grade, B grade, but in case pass grade, and he agreed, he did. So I can declare I'm guilty to buy my grade, not buy, but voluntarily assist. So again, 3 years back, as I said, 20 years I was teaching one of the educational university, and my profession is ICT in education. So I won't teach how to use Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. It's boring. You can find the answer on the internet. So I always talk to my students. I can't teach what you can find the answer on the internet. So I'm very simple to make my academic style. What you cannot find on the internet, I can teach you. For example, previous university, yes, yeah. Please, second page. I can control by myself. Panic. Okay, so again, I'm not familiar with this button. Yeah, sorry. Again, back to my track. After I joined to this PNG University of Technology as a director, and in my job description and also duty statement, they are not stating about this CCTLD manager role, .pg. And for the history of .pg in 1991, assisted by Melbourne University, maybe I forget Robert Else assisted us to study up this .pg domain. It's the early days, but nearly 20 years, no one look after this .pg domain roles. So I think one of my friend mentioned every process doing by manually. You have to download our PDF form, or otherwise before email period, they ask to us by a telephone, and we can send a fax to this application form, fill it, stamp it, send it back, and process by manually. And we are doing Excel spreadsheet, everything Excel spreadsheet until I joined to this university. So you imagine, as I said, I'm back from 20th century or even 19th century, everything manual process. But after I joined to this university, I found this .pg CCTLD is a gold mining. But unfortunately, 20 years, no one touched it, no one did it. It looks like same as other Pacific nations. I believe some Pacific friend already captured this automated registry, but still we are under the automated process. So 3 years back, I joined to this university as a director and the CCTLD manager. I attended several meetings, APTLD, APNIC, also ICANN too. And finally, I met Jordan. Thank you. I met you. Without I didn't meet you. I think still we are doing a manual. Thank you, Bruce and Rosemary. Our other partners always meet me again and encourage me, because when I was in this university, I always feel alone. I'm very alone, and I'm very sad. And but if I travel to here, yes, I'm feeling very cold because this is a very cold climate, but I'm not feeling alone because many friends with me, many One Talks and Poloman with me, so I'm not feeling alone. So assisting by this strong support by AUDA, and first of all, we need to review this policy, because nearly 20 years since 1998, we didn't review this policy, include the pricing. And after I found this policy review, always my boss, our vice chancellor, kick my ass, and he said, you need to increase the pricing first. But I said, BC, just wait. We have to improve our service first, and then we can review the pricing. In PNG, past 25 years, every price increased rapidly, let's say 3 times, 5 times. So you are right, we can increase the price, but before increase the price, we need to improve the service, which means this automated this registry. So I called for the tender just a few months ago, and some of the registry service providers already applied the tender. But after that, I'm stuck in this working visa problem. So past a month, I went back to Japan. Remotely, I assist to our guys, but still pending process. So very soon, we'll automate this .pg registry. And this operational side, maybe it's fine, but important things is many partnership, automated registry is fine. And also, we want to introduce this trial model, and also PNG DNS ecosystem, and also multi-stakeholder model, which I learned from ICANN. And some ideas, yes, I have several ideas. Include I didn't mention this PNG IGF, which I already talked to Andrew this afternoon, and I want to build up this PNG IGF, and also DNS Research Institute, and also important part of our university is youth development, same as this AI topic mentioned. So I can do it. I can open the door, but who will enter this room? It's my young staff. It's my young youth. So just few weeks ago, this is a program, but just last month, July, we conducted this hackathon program with our student, And first, I introduced this hackathon program to our university. Many of students ask me, what is hackathon? Hackathon means hacking bank account, hacking this student database, hacking personal information, and hacking some girlfriend background. No, not this. Hackathon means that you have to identify current problem. Yes, in PNG, there are a lot of problem. But who will fix it? You, us. So we have to identify the problem and we have to fix this problem with some technical solution, not political solution. We have a lot of political hiccups and the problem, but not this one. So this youth entrepreneurship program is also very important. Yes, we can produce 1,000 graduates a year, but where is the job opportunity, which our professor already mentioned? It's very important. And also, you imagine in PNG, less than 1 or 2% student reach to this bachelor degree. Rest drop out, again drop out, and how they can survive. Many people must go back to their village, their home, and they can start it up their own business like agriculture, farming, and fishing, forestry. Tourism also important, but not many job opportunities. And many people remain to stay in city and towns. Where is the job? No job. No one talk. One talk means a family friend look after these young guys. No. Now many street children in Port Moresby, our capital, very sad. Where is our job opportunity? Digital is one of the key components. But we don't need a bachelor degree, we don't need a master degree, but some ideas. How soon we can study up some cartoons, animations? Yes, my elder son want to study in Japan, but because of this like 3D content, animation, or computer graphics, yes, many things in there. But how about in PNG? How about Pacific? So this is our main aim, my aim. And also, currently we are making a good partnership with the University of New South Wales. Fortunately, I made a travel from Tokyo to Sydney, and one stopover at Sydney, nearly 12 hours transit. So I visited this UNSW Sydney campus, and I'm very, very innocent. So I asked to the taxi driver, and this taxi driver may be crazy. He charged me around $100 from airport to the campus, but it's all right. It's fine. I visited the campus and to see the setup. And also this team already visited my campus, and we definitely need to our academic curriculum review. Currently, we have some academic program under the mathematics and the computing, but this mathematics and the computing, especially for the girls, many girls fail over advanced math subject or even physics. So they are not reaching to this maths and computing, computer science program. But we definitely need to review this program. And also, I'm engaged a lot of our graduates to our CCTLD, this is DNS. Currently, I have one admin officer and one technical manager, that's all. But we need to engage. For example, under the AUDA, maybe more than a few hundred employees, but how about us? So we have to create more job opportunities, and the people are making happy, and the people must attend such a regional conference and the international conference. And the PNG, as you know, not small country. It's bigger than New Zealand. We have more than 3 times the population than New Zealand. Of course, Australia is a big country. Other Asian country is big, but we have to rise up our flag always. And we are not free riders. We have to contribute what we can do, what we can make a good partnership. We are not poor country. We have a lot of resources, including the human resource. Because in PNG, more than 50% population is below 20 years old. Example, in Japan, more than 50% population is above or 65 years old. Many old people and exit. But our country, PNG, is a very young. I'm very lucky. I'm standing in front of you, and I'm the right mix of Asia and the Pacific. If I'm Pacific and Asia, I have only 1 or 2 kids, but I'm lucky. I'm married with a PNG local lady, and I have 3 boys and 2 adopted. It's a typical Pacific culture. So I'm very lucky standing in front of you And just short presentation, and my apologies if I'm not making a right word. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. I'm good, that's all. Our next speaker would be Bruce from AUDA. Thank you, Bruce. Bruce is going to present an interesting concept for the Pacific. So I look forward to what he's presenting on behalf of AUDA. So a concept about the registry. So those of you who are from the CCTLD, it is interesting. It will be an interesting presentation for you in the Pacific. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Andrew. Do I need to use this, or does this work as well? That works as well. Excellent. Now I'll see if I get some slides. Oh, there we go. That's very good. Okay, so one of the things is to think about the context that a user has when they choose how they get online today. And the reality is people have a lot of choice. If you have an organisation, you're selling some sort of product or service, you have the choice. You can use online marketplaces, of which there's numerous. You can use social media, so there's the Facebooks, Twitters, TikToks, etc. There's directories that are often specific, like if you're a tradesperson, there's directories for accessing trade services. You have, in the health sciences area, there's directories that give you lists of doctors and things like that. Then you have, in terms of your presence, it's very easy to get a free email, very easy to sign up for something like Gmail or Outlook and immediately start sort of conversing with your community. Then domain names come in and you can have your own website and you can have your own email address that's branded to you, which we would say looks a bit more professional than saying your gmail.com. And there's sort of more of a sense that it's a real person behind that email address. So there's lots of choices. And then if you think about what we're trying to achieve with a domain name, and particularly a country code-based domain name, and I think this really applies to whether you're in Australia or New Zealand or any of the Pacific Islands. Fundamentally, the reason why consumers will access a website that's got .au in Australia, for example, or NZ in New Zealand, is in many cases people want to actually support the local community. And so if you're in Australia and you're buying something or using a service from .au, you're trying to support the local community. There's a lot more awareness now of sort of environmental issues. And again, people think about what's the air miles if I buy something, because that had to travel on aeroplanes to get here. Could it just have been delivered by somebody on a push bike or a scooter or something, and therefore not use much damage to the environment to deliver it to you. So there's a notion if you buy something local and you're in the local region, you kind of expect it to be delivered locally and not delivered over long distances. You also expect it to be delivered quicker. There's also the sense that there's local support. So if I buy something, a product or service from my local region, and there's some problem with it, presumably, in worst case, I can actually take it back to where it was manufactured or made and get it repaired. So there's that notion of local support. And there's also the notion of local law enforcement support. So if something was to go wrong, maybe you purchased something online and it didn't get delivered, or it got delivered and it was in pieces. And if you try to contact the provider and they didn't help, you've still got a backup of local law enforcement, which you wouldn't have if you're purchasing something from another country. So these are all sort of various aspects that are sort of built into the notion of a domain name that's localised for your country, and you're trying to provide services to the local community, or even make it clear that if I was buying something if I was in Australia and I wanted to buy a rugby top or something from New Zealand, there'd be some sense that the rugby top was actually made in New Zealand. It's authentic in some way. So those are sort of some generic reasons for why people would want to see a country code and purchase a domain name there. But one of the challenges here is it's got to be easy, because if you look at all those other options I had on the first slide, if I want to establish a site and start selling some product, maybe I'm in the business of making rugby t-shirts or something, or printing rugby t-shirts, that I can just take a photo and load it up on Instagram. I really don't have to do very much at all. It doesn't cost me anything. Likewise, very easy just to post a picture of, I'm a conference presenter, here's a photo, take a selfie, upload it to Facebook, and I'm done. I've now got my conferencing business up and going. So that's what we're competing with as country code managers and in this region. And so you've got to make it easy. And you also got to keep the costs down. So a lot of these other services are free. And so in some ways we're competing against free. We might be competing against perhaps the cost of registering a business with the government, so there's other costs. One of the things I got from Russell was, I think his measure of the cost of CCTLDs is how many cans of Coke. And he sort of uses that as a measure when he's travelling around, is how many cans of Coke would it take to buy a domain name in your country? I would probably translate it slightly differently to make sure that the domain name is less than the price of a glass of beer at the local pub. I'm finding that's not a very hard target now because the price of the local beer in Australia is going up pretty rapidly these days. So we can usually keep a domain name less than the price of a beer. But you've got to keep the cost down. And then another thing about making it easy is one of the barriers that we find when we ask people, why haven't you established a website? A lot of people will say, we'd really want to establish a website. We think that's a really good idea, but it looks really hard. Their perception is the difference between creating a Facebook page or an Instagram page and a website is some huge difference, and that they need some expertise that they wouldn't otherwise have. They're not an IT person. And so they're scared of getting a domain name and getting a website because they think it's hard. And the reality is there's a lot of tools now where, in fact, there's artificial intelligence. You can actually automatically generate a website now. So I could say, I want to create a website and I'm based in Wellington and I sell hibiscus flowers and I make it available for people that attend conferences in Wellington. And just with a statement like that, a complete website would be built with pictures of hibiscus flowers, completely integrated into a payment engine and already optimised for search engines. And that can be done in 5 minutes. So it's actually not as hard as it might appear. But the challenge with a lot of these tools, there's e-commerce tools like Squarespace and Shopify, there's auto website generators like Wix. Often when you go to these websites, they'll actually ask you if you want to have a domain name, and they'll offer a selection of domain names, but they're generally major names like .com or .net, or major countries like .au or .uk, partly because these big IT companies have integrated to a few large registrars, and those registrars carry the country codes that they find easy to offer. And so to really allow your community to take advantage of these tools, not only do you want to make sure your domain name is available within those tools, so I don't have to go and buy it separately, because people would really struggle to buy a service from a company like Squarespace and then manually be able to configure a domain name that they bought from somewhere else and connect it into Squarespace. Very few people manage to do that. So they'll go with what's offered as a default, which is probably .com. And that not because they necessarily want one of these other names, they'd like their local name, but it's too hard to connect. So it comes back to sort of making it easy. Likewise, when you're looking at things like email, if you want to establish a professional presence and set your domain up, you don't want to build your own email service. You want to use one of the major ones out there, whether it's Gmail or Office 365. But it has to be easy to configure. Otherwise, you'll just stay with gmail.com because that is easy. I can create a new Gmail account in under a minute. But if I said to you in the room, connect an email address to your own domain name, most people here probably would struggle. Especially if you're trying to configure the DNS settings in the sort of the Google application. So you've got to make it easy for to sort of come in through a service provider like Microsoft or Google or Squarespace, select your country code as an option, if you're from the local community, and it should be no different to getting a domain name like .com or .au. So that ecosystem, if you like, is a lot of aggregation. So you've got big companies, they tend to go to large registrars, and those large registrars are generally global in nature. And those registrars will pick up country codes if they're easy to add. And they'll add them if they can just literally log into an interface and select that they'll now turn on .au. And because they've got a lot of automated software underneath that, within seconds they can actually add a country code to their service offerings, as long as it's actually with one of those bigger registrars. So the challenge here in the Pacific region is that a lot of countries are small. They'll have less than 10,000 names. And so large registrars will sort of go, well, we're happy to take on a new domain space if it's worth hundreds of thousands of names or millions of customers. But they don't really want to put the effort into creating a separate business process to connect to a small country that might have different software requirements, manual forms to fill out, like what Russell's saying, because their systems are all fully automated. They won't support any country that's manual. It needs to be automated. But the option, and as Andrew says, the option to think about is, could a group of Pacific CCTLDs in this region actually aggregate their operations? So you could have 20 country codes in the region, each of which is less than 10,000 names, but 20 collectively, that's of interest to registry operators that can provide software. If a registrar can pick up 20 names in the region through a single interface, that's of interest to the registrar. And then if the registrar's got those 20 names from the local region enabled, then if you're a company like Squarespace and you're already connected to that registrar, you just go, sure, we've got customers that would be interested in those names. If it's easy to do, they'll just turn them on. So one of the things that we're sort of considering is there ways that we can sort of aggregate that demand, potentially select a registry operator in the region that has local support, and basically provides a sort of reliable infrastructure. I've got a few slides. I'll go through these really quickly just to pick up on different things, but some of the other benefits of aggregating together is reliability. So if you're running a registry just in one country and you have some natural disaster like a hurricane or typhoon or an earthquake or fire, and it can take down all your infrastructure, you really want to be on a shared infrastructure where one node of that infrastructure, if it's damaged or unavailable, the services from that country are available at one of the other nodes. So it's sort of not just here about aggregating to get into a sort of a bigger infrastructure, but it's actually having connection into a much bigger shared infrastructure that's more resilient to climate change and natural disasters that we've talked about. And then the other aspect of it is that there's more and more cyber criminals that are exploiting business processes, similar to email, obviously. So the big email providers like Gmail and Microsoft, they invest a lot in trying to stop viruses and malware that can appear on their email systems. And the same thing with registry operators. They invest a lot to defend against cyber criminals and cyber attacks. And so it's increasingly hard to do that when you're small in scale. You really want to benefit from an organisation that's spreading those costs over a large number of names, which comes back to sort of keeping your costs down. Because if you were taking up the full costs of redundant infrastructure, multiple DNS servers, spread across into multiple locations with multiple communication links, you build up a DNS abuse team, you're building up a cybersecurity team. If you're doing all that at the price of 10,000 names, then you'd be charging $1,000 a name. So, just starts pushing the price up too much. So you've got to find ways of sharing the resource. I've got some slides, but given time, I will maybe just jump to bits and pieces of some of these. These slides will be available online. But one of the things on the DNS for resilience is each country should try and run their own DNS name server within their country. And that means that if that country was disconnected because the cables were broken or potentially attacked by some sort of attacker, or there was an earthquake and it ripped up the cables or something, you still want the people within your country to be able to access the DNS. You want a DNS name server there. But if everybody's got a DNS running, each of you could run a DNS name server with, say, 100,000 names on it, and you'd have the names of all your surrounding regions on each name server. So if any one name server goes down, the country names are still available on the other name servers. One of the groups that's actually done this is in Latin America. Similar to the Pacific, there's lots of countries in the Caribbean region, and LAC TLD has actually developed a service which is a sort of shared DNS infrastructure. And so any of the Caribbean countries can sort of use that shared infrastructure. And so that might be a model for considering in this region as well, that we sort of plan and build out a DNS infrastructure. Bits of it are in every country, but you've all got each other's CCTLDs on that infrastructure. And if any one node breaks, then all the services are available from one of the other nodes. So it gives you that redundancy. But it also builds capability in your country. So by running your own DNS name server, you can train up your people and have a degree of expertise and DNS knowledge, but you're sharing a common infrastructure across the region. Just jumping, there's various things here about complaints and DNS abuse. One of the other things, and I was conscious of the sessions this morning, but it's not just about infrastructure. So I think a few people said that in some countries there's a lot of effort to put in a telecommunications cable, but not a lot of effort to sort of develop the local economy to make use of that communications cable. And the need to sort of do that, put about as much effort into that than into the infrastructure. So one thing here is that if you can aggregate your infrastructure and have a high quality infrastructure for the collection or the region of Pacific CCTLDs, then within each country you can put effort into actually getting the local community to use that CCTLD. And some of it really is, firstly reminding consumers of what the country is. One of the things that we really promote in .au is that .au means you're Australian. So we have some checks that we do to make sure that the people that register names are Australian. So it gives it authenticity. But really reminding people of that the .au at the end of the name means Australian, or the .ck at the end of the name means Cook Islands. The second part is basically building awareness of the benefits of having your own domain name versus having an Instagram account or a TikTok account or something. Not that this shouldn't be exclusive, because it's good to have a presence across a number of these platforms, but there are some benefits, and it's kind of a separate presentation, but there are definitely benefits of having domain names compared to some of these other alternatives, particularly in terms of being in control of your own destiny. Because some of these platforms can turn you off overnight. You might have 100,000 followers, and for whatever reason they can just close your account and you don't really have much comeback. Whereas if you own your own domain name and you own your own content, you're in control of your destiny. And then the third part of this is about sort of demonstrating that it's easy. So you basically start with awareness raising, what's the country code for, what are the benefits compared to other online alternatives, and then thirdly, just show people how to do it. Literally show someone that you can build a website in 5 minutes. And so that they then removes that barrier that they think that's there, that it's too hard. It's actually trying to make it, help people realise it's not hard, and they can actually control their own sort of online presence. So that's, anyway, a basis of an idea, and more than happy to sort of talk about it more during the week. And there's some slides that go into a bit more detail in those different areas. But the concept is essentially to say there's some benefits in aggregating resources across the region towards some sort of common benefits. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm sure if you have questions, please reach out to Bruce. And a very interesting opportunity here that he has presented for CCTLDs, especially in the Pacific region. So if you're interested to talk more to Bruce, please do so. Our final presentation this afternoon would be from Champika. I'm not sure Champika is here. Oh yeah, he's here. I almost skipped him. So he's from ICANN. Many of you might know about ICANN. ICANN is a multi-stakeholder engagement group, but it has a lot of acronyms. But he will explain what the acronyms mean. Thank you, Champika.
Thanks, Andrew. I know it's 6 past, but I'll try to be very quick. So I'll be actually talking about the universal acceptance. So this is a topic probably some of you are already familiar. So let's go into that straight. Now, when you think of DNS, of course, we can think of different eras, right? DNS is about 40 plus years ago we started. And then if you think of pre-2009, in fact, during early 80s or so, we still had these 3-letter generic TLDs, the legacy ones, .com, .net, and so on. And then we also started having these country code top-level domains. We already know that, the ASCII ones. And then after 2009 or so, we started having these IDNs, IDN country code top-level domains. And then after 2013 or so, we started having these new generic top-level domains and the IDN GTLDs as well. So these these domain names have evolved over the time. So our focus is going to be on the IDNs, or internationalized domain names. Now, as of now, we have delegated 62 IDN country code scripts for 43 countries in the world. Now, when we speak of these scripts, basically these are country code CCTLD scripts. And for example, if you take a country like in India, they have several different language scripts. So you'll see quite a lot of scripts. The IDN scripts have been delegated to India, and similar to, there are different other scripts delegated to other countries as well. Now, talking about the universal acceptance, the whole idea here is that all these domain names, earlier we were talking about different categories of domain names. We had these legacy ones, and then we also had the new generic top-level domains, the long ones, and then the IDNs. So if you're having any applications, basically, all these domain names should work with all these applications. When I say domain names, it includes the email IDs as well, because part of your email ID is also a domain name. There are a few examples here. You can see that if you think of a IDN, or even if you think of a new GTLD, or even if you think of an internationalized email address, all these things should work in your applications. Say, for example, if you register for this conference, and if you have a internationalized email ID that you try to give when you register, and if the registration form says it's an invalid email ID, that means there's a problem. So this is where we say that it is not universal acceptance ready. So the whole idea of universal acceptance is that make sure that all your software applications could support all these domain names and the email addresses that we are talking about. Now, when you think of the UA readiness, or the universal acceptance readiness, there are a few principles that we are talking about. First of all, acceptance. So if you give some input, it should accept it. And then the validation process, it should make sure the validation happens. Then if you're going to store these email IDs or domain names in a database, we should be able to store that and then process it and also display that. Say, for example, if it's a browser, it should display it properly, right? So these are the important principles that we have to think from a UA perspective. Now, these are, again, some examples for you to understand this clearly. So if you're going to type in your browser, say the first one, .organic, which is, just a new GTLD, so browser should display that. If it's not displaying it, that means there's a problem with that application. So we say that UA not ready. I mean, it's not ready, right? And then similarly, the second example is that if you're going to have a IDN TLD over there, so if the browser can display that, then that's UA ready. But if it can't, we have to fix that. And similarly, if you see the third one, you'll see in your, there are some email IDs that we try to display. That's in local language scripts. So if it's not going to display that properly, there's a problem. So UA ready versus not ready, right? Now, when it comes to the email IDs, we say that email address internationalization, or simply we call it as EAI. So basically, your email ID can consist of different categories, different formats. So when we say EAI, so we are talking about having UTF-8 support, right? So now the thing is that, when you go back to historical days, we use ASCII encoding. Now with ASCII, we only have limited sort of character sets we could use. Say, for example, in a domain name, we know that we could use, say, if it's a TLD, we could use from A to Z. And then if it's a second level domain, we can use from A to Z and 0 to 9. And then the hyphen. But if it is anything more than that, say a local language character in a given language, we can't use ASCII because ASCII table is also full, so we have to go into some other encoding scheme. So this is where we go for Unicode-based encoding schemes. There are several encoding schemes in Unicode, but we go for this UTF-8, which is Unicode Transformation Format, 8 bits. Basically, this is the most optimized format for these applications that we are talking about, because one thing is the backward compatibility with ASCII, because you could still work with ASCII as well. And the other thing is the storage optimization and transmission. So this is why UTF-8 has become a standard. Now, so when you have UTF-8 support, that means when you think of an email ID, so you have two parts in your email ID. You have the mailbox part, and then you have the domain part. So if you can basically support the mailbox and the domain, so we call it as EAI ready or EAI based email address. Whereas what is not EAI, I mean, we have been dealing with these things so far. Say, if you're talking about the local language characters in your subject line or in the email body, these things are not considered as EAI because this is being taken care by the MIME, which we already do that, right? So this is the difference between EAI versus not EAI. Right. Now, these are, again, some categories of the email IDs that just for you to get some understanding on this. Earlier, we spoke about different domain names. The first one, what you see is, a new GTLD with short .sky is a new GTLD with short TLD part, whereas the second one is a long GTLD, right? And then, of course, the third one, I have that in local language script, which is actually, it's basically an IDN. Now, by the way, now, when you think of IDNs, of course, considering the DNS resolution happens based on the ASCII. So we have to, first of all, if you have these IDNs, we have to convert these IDN or the glyphs into ASCII conversions. This is where we have something called Punycode conversion, and the DNS resolution will be done based on the ASCII characters. So this all these local language characters has to be converted into ASCII. Now, for the email IDs, there are again different formats of email IDs that we have. The first one, you can see the mailbox can be ASCII, whereas the domain name, the IDN part can be the local or the Unicode based. Whereas we can also have some email IDs where you can have Unicode based mailboxes and then the ASCII domains. And then some other email IDs also you could have both the mailbox and the domain name can be Unicode based as well. And also you'll find some email IDs where usually we write from left to right. You also find some scripts where you write from right to left, like Arabic, for example. So when you give any of these email IDs into your application, if it accepts that, if it can validate and process and do all those things what we discussed earlier, then we can say we are UA ready. But if it fails or if it gives some errors, if it can't process, then we won't be universal acceptance ready, right? So this is where we have to consider. So make sure that all your applications can support all those domain names and email ID formats that we discussed. Now, recently we did some survey among CCTLDs just to sort of get an idea how they can support these IDNs and EAI based email IDs. Out of about 309 CCTLDs in the world altogether, that's the total number. We had about 75 responses from the CCTLDs. So out of those, we have 13% of the 75 CCTLDs that responded to this survey. They are UA ready, and then about 56% or so they are partially ready, and then we see about 31% they are not ready with UA, right? Now, again, further going into details of those partially ready CCTLDs, these were basically, the partial reasons. So some of them, they could support IDNs. Some of them, they, support GTLDs longer than 6 characters. These are the longer new GTLDs. And then some support short new GTLDs. These are all the different percentages. And again, different email ID categories that I was telling you before. Mailboxes could be Unicode based. The domains could be Unicode based. So different categories, some could support those, some could not. So these are the partial ones that we were talking about. And then again, some of the other questions that we had was, what is the motivation to become the UA, for them to become UA ready? So these were also some interesting answers over there. You can see that a lot of them, they said, more than 50% of them, they said that to grow their customer base. So this is something to consider. If you are a CCTLD and if you are not supporting IDNs or EAI-based email IDs, consider this. And then to gain more international customers, this is also something that you may have to think about, because especially nowadays, the IDN-based domain names, especially the new GTLD round is coming up as well. So there are going to be some more IDN-based GTLDs. So people are more prone to get more IDN domains and email IDs. So supporting international customers, something for you to think about. And to be more competitive in response to the request from their customers. So these are the general sort of motivations behind them supporting universal acceptance. And also, some of them, they said, yeah, the next round is coming up, so they want to make sure that they support, they support all the applications with UA readiness before the next round. One of the other things also, especially if there are some operators here, the network operators, mobile operators, and so on, who run their mail servers, this is also something for them to think about, the mail server support. Because when you think of mail servers, when we have this protocol SMTP, the mail servers, they talk, that's the protocol they talk between the mail servers. Now, earlier we talked about UTF-8. So we have to make sure if these mail servers has to support IDNs, they also has to support SMTP UTF-8. So this is where if you're operating any mail servers, you have to make sure that your mail servers could understand SMTP UTF-8. If it doesn't understand servers do not support EAI-based email IDs. So this is something for you to think about. If there are operators here, if there are organizations who are, providing name servers, the mail servers to others, make sure that your mail servers could support the EAI or the SMTP UTF-8 support. So this is we have been doing well because you can see that from 2021 to 2023, over this period, the percentage of mail servers that could support the EAI-based email IDs has been growing from about 19% to about 22% or so. So it is gradually increasing, but still long way to go, 75% to go, right? So this is something, again, for you to think about. Yep, that's all. Just wanted to quickly, convey the message, especially supporting UA and making sure your applications are all UA ready. You can still get involved with UASG. UASG is the Universal Acceptance Steering Group. If you go to uasg.tech, there are quite a lot of resources. There are a lot of working groups that you can join. And also, depending on your interests, you can contribute to the work happening in the UASG space. That's it, and thank you very much. If you have any questions, I can quickly take. Otherwise, feel free to get in touch. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Champika. And I want to thank all our last speakers. And if you have questions, please, you can raise them with Champika, Bruce, or Russell. But we want to finish off the day. It's been a long day, but thank you. Day one of Pacific IGF is now gone. But before you go, we'd like to acknowledge the speakers who have spoken today. Please, if you could come forward and receive a Pacific gift. Thanking you for taking the time to do your presentation today. So I'll ask Sarai to maybe coordinate this. So if you're a speaker, please come and get one. We acknowledge you very much.